Just go on dancing with me like this forever, and I'll never tire. We'll scrape our shoes on the stars and hang upside down from the moon. Earlier this week, I finished The Long Walk by Stephen King, which is his second book, writing as Richard Bachman, his author alter ego. And I'll just be honest with you guys, this is definitely my least favorite Stephen King book so far. You guys know he's my favorite author. I love the way he writes. I love his characters. I just love everything about his storytelling. But this just didn't work for me at all. But before I explain why it didn't work for me, I want to give you guys the premise and the good stuff. So here's the thing. The Long Walk is a story about 100 boys in a dystopian America where they are forced to participate, well, not forced, they actually volunteer to participate in this thing called the Long Walk, which is they have to walk as far as they can without collapsing, and they only get 3 warnings for every, I think, 1 hour. And essentially, if they collapse or they run out of warnings, they're shot and killed until only 1 remains. It's kind of in the same vein as stuff that came after it, like Battle Royale or Hunger Games, although it's very different than those two. I want to make that very clear. But it's very much in that dystopian teenage killing each other accidentally genre of fiction, right? So for me, look, going into this, I was kind of excited because I like dystopian books, especially good dystopian books. I really look forward to them. You know, I love The Hunger Games, one of my favorite series growing up as a kid. I loved Maze Runner. I loved, all those things. So going into this, I was like, yeah, I'm going to really like this because I love this genre. I love this subgenre of horror and of science fiction or whatever. But yeah, it just didn't work. What's good about this book, I will say first, is that it's paced very well. I feel like this is a pretty well-paced Stephen King book. This is not slow. This gets just straight into it. Like, the kids are just dropped off. They're put right into this terrible scenario, and, like, no spoilers, but you guys can probably figure out where this is going. They start dying pretty rapidly, all right? These kids start dying. They start biting it pretty quickly. And what I like about this book is the psychological aspect, right? I'm not a psych major or anything, but I do like a good, psychological horror every now and then. And that's kind of what this book really leans into. It's this idea of descent into madness, of putting children basically out on this road into the wilderness and forcing them to survive without stopping. So the kids are rained on. They are forced to, deal with hypothermia and, ammonia and all sorts of other, horrible diseases. And, they're forced into this scenario where, they are making friends with each other, and then those friends are dying. And you see the psychological toll that takes on someone, and the psychological toll it takes on someone to just keep on walking without any sort of serious break, because they only get 3 warnings, and the warnings are 30 seconds apiece, and you can get your warnings back, but realistically you're almost walking without a stop. And that's kind of what Stephen King takes you through. He takes you through what it would be like to be put in this scenario of, you walk so far that, the leather's falling off your shoe and your clothing's tearing apart, and you're becoming anemic and starving yourself and all sorts of really horrible stuff like that. So the horror element of this book is superb. I mean, it's really, really good, guys. This is the kind of stuff that is gut-wrenching to read. It is almost sickening at certain points what happens to certain characters, like the way he describes their flesh and, the blood in their feet. Oh, it was horrible. But beyond that, this book did not work for me. First of all, we are not given any sort of reason that The Long Walk exists. I feel like, from what I understand, Stephen King wrote this in high school. So I gotta give him a few, I gotta give him a little leeway. But you're not gonna explain why The Long Walk exists? I mean, what good does this do the government whatsoever? The Hunger Games, there's a reason there. Battle Royale, there's a reason there. Maze Runner, there's a reason there, right? The Long Walk, it's just for fun, I guess. It's just fun to watch children suffer. Like I like that's it. Like I just don't get it. I get why somebody would participate because they're gonna be given millions of dollars and anything they could want for the rest of their life. Uh, Especially this idea of like dealing with a death wish and what's that like to have a death wish or have suicidal tendencies but only want to do it one way. But beyond that, we're really not given a lot of motivation for these characters. And that's another really weak aspect. The characters, man. Stephen King is one of these authors where I expect great character work. That is what he is great at. That's what he excels at. That is why I like his stories so much. Because no matter how ridiculous the premise is, no matter how much I think, oh, the plot's just not working for me, the characters always pull through. And here it just didn't. It felt like this book was written as like an examination of the human psyche under extreme amounts of stress. And for some people that sounds fantastic. That sounds right up your alley. And if you like this book or you have a different opinion than me, that is fine. You know, I think I'm in the minority opinion of saying I don't like this book very much. But I just have to be honest. I expected good character work and I didn't get it. And the plot is not so intriguing as to be like, oh, like I'm okay with like the meh character work, or the premise is so great that I have to see it through. I finished it because it was an enjoyable read, but this is definitely not one where I'm like, I have to reread this in the future, you know? There are a lot of Stephen King books out there that I want to reread. I want to reread The Stand. I want to reread It. I'm going to want to reread Dark Tower. I'm going to want to reread Salem's Lot. But this is just one of those ones where I'm like, I can skip this. I can skip this and not feel bad at all. So I think for some people, I can see why they like it so much. But for me, this just did not really work. It's a good book, but by like my regular Stephen King standards, it was lacking. It was really, really lacking. I do think that if I had read this earlier in my journey of him as an author, I may have liked it more. But, you know, I've read some of his best works, and this just does not compare. So I'm going to give it a 7.7 out of 10. And I'm going to say that unless you're like a huge fan of Stephen King or this specific like subgenre of fiction, you can probably skip this one.